Hello, family. Angela Cage here with Cage Wellness Collaboration. And this is part two of the trigger series. In part one, we talked about the importance of identifying your triggers. And here in part two, we're going to talk about how to identify your triggers. So there are some key things that you can do to start to identify and recognize your triggers. The first thing that you want to do is pay attention to your emotions. Your emotions are going to be key to really identifying what triggers you. And you're going to have to do this work over the course of some time to truly get a full understanding of what truly triggers you. But that's the first part, is paying attention to your emotions. But not only do you want to pay attention to your emotions, you also want to listen to your body, because there are certain signals in our bodies that will let us know. And it's really a bodily response to the emotions that we're feeling, but it can be a disruption in the homeostasis. So normally, things are, you're going fine, nothing's really happening, but then something triggers you. You have a negative emotion, and then the balance that you normally have within yourself, that peace is disrupted. So that is a sign of a trigger. The other things that can be telling for a trigger, and this next telltale sign, this is really when something has triggered you and it lingers with you because it disrupts your sleep. So if you have some event that has happened, and it bothers you, it stays on your mind, and it disrupts your sleep, that is a something that has triggered you, and you want to make recognition of that. The next thing is you may have gut issues. So something may have happened and it just makes you sick to your stomach. And I know that, we say that, oh, so and so makes me sick. We often say that, but there are times when a situation is traumatic enough or triggering enough, it can cause you digestive issues. So you do want to pay attention to your gut, both literally and figuratively. So literally is when it really gives you digestive issues, but figuratively, when you have a feeling that you feel so strongly deep in your core, down in your gut, that can be an indication that you're being triggered. So again, listen to your gut, both literally and figuratively. When something stays on your mind, you've been triggered. There was a point in my life when something could trigger me. So the thing that would trigger me is I was involved in a car accident, and from that time, uh, for about 6 months. Anytime I would witness a car accident, even if it was a car accident on TV, I would immediately get a headache. When I was involved in that car accident, I did have a headache after that for quite some time. But then after that, even just witnessing a car accident, whether I saw it visually with my eyes or I heard the accident, the screeching tires and the sound of the metal colliding with metal, with the two cars coming together, or even on TV, that was triggering for me, and I would immediately get a headache. So I had to work through that. So again, you really want to do the work to identify your triggers. And I want to talk a little bit more about identifying your triggers. The next thing that you can do to identify your triggers, and again, this is not something that you're going to be able to do necessarily in one sitting, but you're really going to want to take the time, sit with yourself, spend time with yourself to really identify those triggers. But you want to ask yourself 5 questions. So again, the first one is how am I feeling? So when you feel you recognize that you're feeling a negative emotion, you're having an adverse emotional reaction to something that has happened. So stop and check in with yourself. How am I feeling? And really make note of that. For me, I like to write things down. If I don't have pen and paper, I'll pull up the notes app on my phone and really just jot stuff down. But when I'm really trying to hone in on something, I really want to know, how am I feeling? What are the emotions that have come up from this situation? The next thing that you want to ask yourself is, what was the event or action that immediately precipitated this feeling? So, what happened that brought this emotion on? Make that connection, connect those dots. Then the next thing that you'll want to ask yourself is, who are the people that are around me? Because not only can a situation be triggering, but people can be triggering. And I have a story about that, because at one of my jobs, there was a person who was such a bully. They were very manipulative. They gaslighted people. And this person, when I say they made me sick, they tap danced on that last nerve. And I really had to do work in order to not allow this person to have access to my control panel. But it got to the point where this person was so triggering that when the email would come up, and at that job that I worked at, when an email came up, there would be a little icon that showed the person's face. And immediately when I saw that person's little icon with their little face and their name, I would have an emotional reaction, because I was triggered, because the actions that this person took was so egregious. It really did not set well with me, and it would really trigger me. They very rarely did they come for me, but they did. So we had to have our go round. But they would come for people around me, and I just I couldn't stand it. I did not like it. So I had to find a way to identify the trigger, and do some work so that that person did not create a trigger for me. The next thing that you want to ask yourself is, what time is it? Because that can be another key to you being triggered. Is it day? Is it night? Is it right after work? Is it right before you go to work? So, just really identifying the time. And again, these are all dots that are being connected to you identifying your trigger. The last thing that you want to ask is, where am I? Because that can also be a key to you having a trigger. A location can trigger you. So, really honing in on all of those things, your emotions, the events or situations that just happened, the people that you're around, the time of day or night, like the timing of it, or whatever is happening. It could be situational timing, so not necessarily 7 o'clock, but it could be the timing. Like if something, you have a routine, it could be right before something in your routine or right after. So identifying and recognizing the time, and also the location. So again, you really want to do the work to identify those triggers. And really, it's really checking in with yourself. And you really going to have to spend some time with yourself. You know you better than anyone else. And this is going to be time spent for you to really get to know more about yourself, and really figure out what is making you tick, what is making you trigger, so that you can address it. And I just want to go over just a few questions. Well, not necessarily questions, but a few things for you to ponder. So, when you have those negative emotions, because the big tie to being triggered is the negative or adverse emotional response. So, really take time to analyze your emotions. So, what triggered me? So, if you have a feeling like, I feel excluded, really hone in on what made you feel excluded, and especially if it gives you an extreme emotional reaction. Really, what made you feel excluded? What made you feel powerless? What made you feel judged or blamed or disrespected? And really identifying the emotion that is tied to your trigger, that can really, that's really where you begin to do the work. Disrespect is a big trigger for me. So really, when I had to sit down and do my work, when I felt disrespected, I really had to analyze the situation that happened immediately before that. And I think that is what happened with that person that I told you that about, that was at one of my jobs that I worked at. The reason why it was so triggering for me, because it was tied and linked to disrespect. So disrespect is a trigger for me. But some other emotions that could be linked to triggers is lack of affection. If you feel that you can't speak up, you feel lonely, ignored, if you feel like you can't be honest in a situation. And again, that might be tied to not being able to speak up. So if you feel like there may be one situation where you feel like you can't say anything, but there may be other situations where you are willing to give voice, but it's just not an authentic voice because you feel like you can't be honest. Other emotions to consider when identifying your triggers is feeling forgotten, feeling manipulated, feeling unloved, controlled, frustrated, disconnected, feeling a lack of passion, trapped, feeling unsafe, or feeling like something was unfair or unjust. So again, and that's not an all-inclusive list. Any negative emotion that you feel, and that really has like an extreme um reaction within you, an extreme emotional reaction, really take the time to parse out what was happening around that situation so that you can really do the work to identify the triggers. You know that I want you all to win, and part of winning and being your best self is identifying your triggers. So in part one, we talked about the importance of identifying triggers. Here we talked about how you can identify your triggers, and stay tuned for part three, because in part three, we're going to talk about addressing your triggers. So, again, if you missed part one, or you just want to get ahead of the series, this is really resonating with you, and you want to go out there and get that information, go ahead and head over to the YouTube channel, and you can view all parts of the series there. And if you're seeing this on any of the social media platforms, you can check out part one by going to the social media pages and checking it out there. I hope you all make it a great day. I love you all always.